Our wedding was perfect. I thought I'd married the love of my life. But that night when we got home, she locked the bedroom door and refused to let me in. She just whispered, "It's for your own good." Imagine how humiliating that feels, to be married yet treated like a stranger. My family noticed, my friends joked, and my heart started to break. But what I discovered one night when I finally opened that door was worse than heartbreak. It was a secret that would change everything. Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, what would you do if this happened? To you, let me take you back to that day. Sarah looked like an angel walking down the aisle. Her dress caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the chapel windows, and when she smiled at me, I swear the whole world disappeared. Everything was exactly as we'd dreamed. White roses everywhere, our families crying happy tears, the photographer capturing every perfect moment. During our vows, Sarah's voice trembled with emotion as she whispered, "Forever," while slipping the ring onto my finger. Her hands were warm, soft, and I remember thinking this was the beginning of our beautiful life together. The reception was magical. We danced until our feet hurt, laughed until our cheeks ached, and I couldn't stop staring at my wedding ring, still amazed that this incredible woman was now my wife. But then we got home. I'll never forget the sound of that lock clicking shut. I was standing in the hallway in my wedding pajamas. You know, the silly matching set Sarah had bought us as a joke. And suddenly I heard it. Click. The solid, final sound of the bedroom door locking from the inside. My stomach dropped like I'd fallen off a cliff. "Sarah?" I called softly, my hand resting on the doorknob. "Honey, what's wrong?" Her voice came through the wood, muffled but clear. "It's for your own good." For my own good? What did that even mean? I stood there for what felt like hours, my bare feet getting cold on the hardwood floor, trying to process what was happening. This was our wedding night. This was supposed to be the most romantic, intimate night of our lives. Instead, I was locked out of my own bedroom by my own wife. I pressed my ear to the door, listening for any clue about what was wrong. Was she crying? Was she on the phone? All I could hear was my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was just nervous. You know how some people get overwhelmed on big days. Maybe she needed a few minutes to collect herself, to transition from bride back to wife. Maybe this was normal and I was overreacting. But that whisper, "It's for your own good," it kept echoing in my head as I made my way to the living room couch. I grabbed a throw pillow and a blanket from the closet, and I lay there staring at the ceiling until dawn, wondering if this was how all marriages began. The locked door stood between us like a wall, and I had no idea that it was the first barrier in what would become the most confusing, heartbreaking, and ultimately life-changing mystery of my life. Days turned into weeks, and the horrible truth became clear. This wasn't a one-time thing. Every single night at exactly 10 p.m., Sarah would kiss me goodnight like a loving wife, walk upstairs and lock me out of our bedroom. Every single night. The humiliation was eating me alive. When my buddy Jake called to ask about married life, I found myself making excuses. "Oh, you know how it is," I'd laugh awkwardly. "Sarah likes her space." The words tasted like poison in my mouth. Sunday dinners at Sarah's parents' house became torture. Her mother would glance between us with these pitying looks like she could sense something was wrong but was too polite to ask. Her father would clap me on the back and joke about newlywed exhaustion, and I'd force a smile while dying inside. Have you ever felt like the person you love most is hiding something from you? Let me know in the comments. During the day, Sarah was everything I'd fallen in love with. She'd make my coffee exactly how I liked it, laugh at my terrible jokes, curl up next to me on the couch to watch movies. She'd run her fingers through my hair and tell me she loved me, and I'd almost forget about the nights. Almost. But then I started noticing other things. Sarah was constantly checking her phone. Quick, nervous glances when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd step into the bathroom or the kitchen to take calls, speaking in hushed tones that would stop the moment I appeared. Once, I caught a fragment. "I know it's hard, but I have to." Then she saw me and quickly said, "I'll call you back." There was something else, too. She'd started wearing this new perfume, something floral and expensive that she'd never worn before. When I complimented it, she got this guilty look in her eyes and mumbled something about trying new things. The clock became my enemy. Every evening I'd watch those hands creep toward 10 p.m. with growing dread. Sarah would get this distant look in her eyes around 9:30, like she was preparing for something. She'd start glancing toward the stairs, checking her phone one last time, and I knew what was coming. "I'm getting tired," she'd say with that same nervous laugh. "Long day, you know?" I'd try to kiss her, to hold her, to somehow break through whatever barrier was building between us, but she'd slip away like water through my fingers. "Good night, honey," she'd whisper, and up the stairs she'd go. Then came the sound I'd grown to hate, the soft click of our bedroom door lock engaging, sealing me out of my own marriage. I'd sit on that couch night after night, listening to the grandfather clock in the hallway tick away the hours, wondering what I'd done wrong. Was I not attractive anymore? Had I said something hurtful? Was I too clingy, too demanding? The worst part was how she'd avoid eye contact when I tried to bring it up. "It's temporary," she'd say, but she wouldn't look at me. "You just have to trust me." Trust her? I was trying, but trust requires some kind of foundation, some explanation that makes sense. "It's for your own good" wasn't an explanation. It was a wall. And every night that wall got a little higher and I felt a little more lost in my own home. By the third month, I couldn't hide it anymore. My best friend Mark had started making jokes that felt less like jokes and more like concerned observations. "Dude, you look like you haven't slept in weeks," he said during our usual Wednesday night basketball game. "Marriage wearing you out. Already?" The other guys laughed, but there was an uncomfortable edge to it. They could see something was wrong even if they didn't know what. "Sarah's got me sleeping on the couch," I admitted, trying to make it sound casual. "Says I snore too, loud." The silence that followed was deafening. These were guys who'd been through divorces, who'd survived their own relationship disasters, and they knew that explanation didn't add up. What do you think was really going on? Was she cheating, or was there something else? Drop your theories below. The breaking point came at our friend's barbecue last Saturday. Sarah and I arrived together, her hand in mine, looking like the perfect couple. But an hour into the party, she vanished. "Taking a work call," she told me, holding up her phone. But it was Saturday evening, and Sarah worked at a marketing firm that definitely didn't do business on weekends. I watched her walk to the far corner of the yard, phone pressed to her ear, and something cold settled in my stomach. She was wearing that new perfume again, and she'd spent an unusual amount of time getting ready. There was an energy about her, a kind of guilty excitement that I had never seen before. I caught glimpses of myself in the sliding glass door as I watched her pace back and forth, gesturing animatedly to whoever was on the other end of that call. The man staring back at me looked defeated, confused, like he didn't recognize himself anymore. When had I become this person? Suspicious, paranoid, constantly analyzing my wife's every move. Sarah was gone for over an hour. When she finally came back, her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were bright, like she'd just received good news. But when I asked about the call, she just shrugged. "Work stuff. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I didn't know anything, anymore. That night I lay on the couch replaying every detail of her phone call. The way she'd smiled while talking. The way she'd kept her voice so low I couldn't make out words. The way she'd kept checking to make sure I wasn't getting closer. And then there were the whispered conversations with her sister Emma. I'd walk into a room and catch the tail end of intense discussions that would stop abruptly when they saw me. "We'll talk later," Sarah would say quickly, and Emma would nod with this knowing look that made me feel like an outsider in my own marriage. I started having dark thoughts that I hated myself for thinking. Was she having an affair? Was there someone else she was talking to, someone she was getting dressed up for? The evidence seemed to point in that direction. The secretive phone calls, the new perfume, the way she'd light up after those mysterious conversations, only to lock me out when night fell. But then I'd remember how she looked at me during the day, The way she'd touch my face when she thought I was asleep on the couch. The way she'd say, "I love you," with such intensity it made my chest ache. If she was cheating, why did she seem to love me so much during daylight hours? Why would she bother with the affection, the coffee, the gentle touches? Nothing made sense, and the not knowing was killing me slowly, one locked door at a time. I'd catch my reflection in mirrors around the house, and each time I looked more haggard, more lost. My friends were starting to ask if I was okay. My co-workers noticed I was distracted. And through it all, Sarah maintained her strange double life, loving wife by day, mysterious stranger by night. The doubt was eating me alive, and I knew I couldn't live like this much longer. I never thought I'd become the kind of husband who snoops through his wife's things. The idea disgusted me, went against everything I believed about trust and respect in marriage. But after 4 months of sleeping on the couch with no real explanation, I was desperate for answers. It started small. When Sarah was in the shower, I'd quickly check her phone. My hands would shake as I scrolled through her messages, hating myself for violating her privacy, but needing to know what was destroying our marriage. But there was nothing obvious, just normal conversations with friends, work emails, grocery lists. Would you have started investigating too, or would you have confronted her directly? I'm curious what you would do. The real breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah had told me she was going grocery shopping, said she needed to pick up ingredients for dinner. Something in her tone seemed off, too casual, too practiced. So I made a decision that still makes me sick to think about. I followed her. My heart was pounding as I stayed 3 cars behind her Honda, watching as she drove right past our usual grocery store. She kept going downtown, and I felt that cold dread settling in my stomach again. Where was she going? She pulled into the parking lot of a medical building on 5th Street. I watched from across the street as she sat in her car, for several minutes checking her phone, taking deep breaths like she was preparing for something difficult. Then she got out and walked into the building with purpose, like she'd been there many times before. My mind raced with possibilities. Was she sick? Was that why she'd been acting so strange? So protective? Maybe she had some medical condition she was afraid to tell me about. Maybe the locked doors, the secrecy, all of it was because she was dealing with some illness and didn't want me to worry. For a moment, I felt relief. A medical issue I could handle. We could face whatever it was together. But when she came home, 2 hours later with grocery bags and acted like she'd been at the store the whole time, that relief turned to something darker. How was shopping? I asked, watching her face carefully. Fine, she said, not meeting my eyes. They were out of the good pasta, so I had to go to 2 different stores. It was such a smooth lie, delivered with such practiced ease, that I realized this wasn't new. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. That night I couldn't stop thinking about the medical building. I started paying attention to everything. Every key Sarah carried, every pocket she checked, every drawer she opened. I became obsessed with keys, wondering what secrets they might unlock. I noticed she kept a small key on her keychain that I'd never seen before, different from our house keys, our car keys. When I asked about it, she said it was for her desk at work, but something about the way she clutched her keys afterward told me she was lying again. Sleep became impossible, even on the couch. I'd lie there analyzing every conversation, every gesture, every glance. When did she start carrying that purse everywhere? Why did she always take her phone into the bathroom now? What was in that locked desk drawer in our home office that she claimed was just old paperwork? The paranoia was consuming me. I felt like a detective in my own home, and I hated what I was becoming. But I also couldn't stop. Every day brought new questions, new inconsistencies in her stories, new reasons to doubt everything I thought I knew about my wife. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed to sense my growing suspicion. She became more careful, more guarded. She'd pause before answering simple questions like she was calculating the safest response. She'd watch me watching her, and I could see the guilt in her eyes, or maybe it was fear. Whatever was happening, whatever secret she was keeping, it was big enough that she was willing to destroy our marriage to protect it. and that terrified me more than any affair could have. 3 months into this nightmare, I reached my limit. We were at dinner with our friends Tom and Lisa, trying to act like a normal, happy couple, when Tom made a joke that shattered what was left of my composure. "Look at these newlyweds," he laughed, gesturing at us with his wine glass. "I bet you two can't keep your hands off each other at home, right?" The table erupted in good-natured laughter, but Sarah's laugh sounded hollow, forced. I watched her face transform, a quick flash of panic followed by an overly bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, you know how it is," she said with that same nervous giggle I'd grown to hate. "We're still figuring out the rhythm of married life." I felt physically sick. Here we were, pretending to be blissfully married while I spent every night alone, on the couch locked out of my own bedroom by my own wife. That night I couldn't take it anymore. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said as soon as we got home. My voice was shaking, but I was past caring. "I can't do this anymore. The locked door, the secrets, the lies about where you're going. What is happening to us?" She turned pale, and for a moment I thought she might finally tell me the truth. Instead, she broke down crying, not the gentle tears of someone who's been caught, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere desperate and afraid. "Please," she whispered through her tears. "Please just trust me a little longer. You'll understand soon, I promise. It's almost over. Has anyone ever asked you to trust them without giving you a reason? How long would you wait? Let me know what you think." "Almost over?" I stared at her, feeling like I was losing my mind. "What's almost over, Sarah? What are you talking about?" But she couldn't explain. She just kept crying and repeating the same words. "Trust me. Please trust me. It's for your own good." I felt something break inside my chest. For my own good? "Sarah, locking me out of our bedroom isn't for my own good. Lying about where you're going isn't for my own good. Making me feel like a stranger in my own marriage isn't for my own good." She reached for me, but I stepped back. The hurt in her eyes was genuine. I could see that, but it only made everything more confusing. "I love you," she said desperately. "I love you so much, and I'm trying to protect you. You have to believe me." "Protect me from what?" I was shouting now, months of frustration and confusion pouring out. "What could possibly be so dangerous that you have to lock me out of our bedroom every night? What are you protecting me from?" But she just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't. Not yet. Soon. I promise. Soon." That night, I called my older brother David. I sat on the porch at midnight, staring up at the stars, trying to find words for what was happening to my marriage. "She's hiding something big," I told him. "Either she's having an affair or she's sick or I don't know. But she won't tell me what it is, and she locks me out of our bedroom every night." David was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "That's not normal, man. Have you considered that maybe you need to make an ultimatum? Tell her she either explains what's going on or you're moving out." But I couldn't. Despite everything, I still loved her. During the day, when she'd make my coffee and smile at me like I was her whole world, I could still see the woman I'd married, the woman who whispered forever during our vows. The conversation ended with both of us crying, Sarah upstairs behind. Her locked door, me on the couch with a phone full of advice I couldn't follow. I was trapped between love and sanity, between trust and self-preservation, and I had no idea which way to turn. The tears we both shed that night represented something profound. We were both in genuine pain, both suffering, but for reasons I couldn't understand. And that made everything so much worse. The next few weeks brought discoveries that made everything even more confusing. It started when I was looking for batteries in Sarah's purse. She'd asked me to grab her car keys, and I saw them tucked in the side pocket along with something else. Medical pamphlets, folded neatly and hidden at the bottom of her bag. My hands trembled as I unfolded them. Understanding anxiety disorders, sleep pattern disruptions, and mental health. When someone you love has PTSD. PTSD? Anxiety disorders? What was Sarah dealing with that she couldn't tell me? I quickly put everything back, my mind reeling. Maybe this wasn't about me at all. Maybe Sarah was struggling with something serious, something that explained the locked doors and the secrecy. But then I found the receipts. They were tucked inside a book on her nightstand, receipts for expensive supplements I'd never seen her take. Melatonin, magnesium, something called L-theanine. All things related to sleep and anxiety, all purchased over the past few months. What do you think she was protecting him from? The truth was stranger than anything I could have imagined. The strangest discovery came by accident. I was putting away laundry in Sarah's dresser when a piece of paper fluttered to the floor from between her sweaters. It was a page torn from a journal written in her careful handwriting. Day 127. He still doesn't know. The research is almost complete. Dr. Martinez says we should have answers within the month. I hate protecting him from the truth, but it's the only way to keep him safe until we understand what's happening. Keep him safe? Safe from what? I read the fragment over and over, trying to make sense of it. Day 127. That was roughly 4 months, which aligned with when the locked doors had started. Dr. Martinez, was that who she'd been seeing at the medical building? The words protecting him from the truth hit me like a physical blow. What truth was so dangerous that knowing it would somehow hurt me? Over the following days, I became hyper-aware of everything about Sarah. She'd lost weight. I could see it in her face, the way her clothes hung looser. Dark circles shadowed her eyes like she wasn't sleeping well either. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Part love, part fear, part something that looked like guilt. The shadows in our house seemed deeper now. I noticed how Sarah would pause in doorways, checking corners, like she was looking for something. How she'd sometimes stand outside our bedroom door for several minutes before locking it, like she was gathering courage for something difficult. I started having vivid dreams, or maybe they were nightmares. I dreamed that I was the danger Sarah was protecting herself from, that somehow I was the threat in our marriage. I'd wake up on the couch in cold sweats, my heart pounding, with fragments of images I couldn't quite remember. During the day, Sarah's love for me seemed more intense than ever. She'd hug me longer, kiss me more deeply, tell me she loved me with an urgency that felt almost desperate. It was like she was storing up affection for both of us, trying to make up for the nights of separation. "Are you okay?" I asked her one morning, watching her stir her coffee with shaking hands. She looked up at me with those tired, beautiful eyes and smiled. "I'm fine, just tired. This will all be over soon." What will be over soon? But she just kissed my forehead and walked away, leaving me alone with my questions and the growing certainty that whatever was happening, it was bigger and more complicated than an affair or a simple mental health issue. Sarah was living in the shadows of our marriage, and somehow so was I. We were both suffering, both afraid, both protecting each other from truths we couldn't share, and I had no idea that the biggest truth of all was that I was the very danger she was trying to protect us both from. 6 months after our wedding, everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered in a single moment. Sarah had come home from work complaining of a cold. She was congested, exhausted, and after dinner she curled up on the couch with a cup of tea, and what she said was cold medicine. "I feel awful," she mumbled, her voice thick and sleepy. "This stuff is supposed to help me sleep." Within an hour, she was out cold on the couch, breathing deeply, completely unconscious in a way I hadn't seen since our wedding night. And for the first time in 6 months, when I went upstairs at 10 p.m., the bedroom door was unlocked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Have you ever discovered something that made you question everything you thought you knew? Keep watching. This gets even crazier. My hands were shaking as I turned the handle. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. Part of me expected the door to be locked anyway, like the past 6 months had been some elaborate test that I was about to fail, but the door opened. What I found inside changed everything. Our bedroom, the room where we'd planned to build our life together, had been completely transformed into something that looked like a medical monitoring station. There were cameras mounted in 3 corners of the room, their red recording lights blinking steadily. Professional-grade equipment I didn't recognize was stacked on what used to be Sarah's vanity. Notebooks were scattered across the desk, filled with charts and observations in Sarah's neat handwriting. But that wasn't the worst part. On the nightstand, next to what should have been my side of the bed, there were small labeled containers. I picked one up with trembling fingers. Hair sample, day 15. Another, saliva sample, day 23. My name was written on every single label. My legs gave out. I sank into the chair at the desk, trying to process what I was seeing. There was a thick manila folder with my name typed across the front in official-looking letters. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, pictures of me sleeping on the couch, pictures of me from angles I'd never seen, taken with what must have been hidden cameras, charts tracking my sleep patterns, my movements around the house, even what I ate and when. The medical notes were in Sarah's handwriting, but they used terms I didn't understand. Subject exhibits increased REM activity. Motor responses during episodes 3 and 7. Violent imagery and sleep-talking incidents. Violent imagery? Sleep-talking? What was Sarah documenting about me that I didn't even know about myself? I flipped through page after page of observations, dates, times, detailed notes about my behavior that painted a picture of someone I didn't recognize. According to these notes, I talked in my sleep regularly. I moved violently. I had episodes that Sarah had been timing and documenting with scientific precision. The surveillance cameras weren't just recording. They were focused on the couch where I slept every night. Every single night for 6 months, Sarah had been watching me, studying me, documenting things about me that I had no memory of. I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly closed the folder, but I couldn't move from the chair. My entire body felt numb, like I was in shock. Sarah appeared in the doorway, no longer looking sleepy despite the cold medicine. When she saw me sitting at the desk surrounded by her research, her face didn't show anger or surprise. It showed relief. "You found it," she said quietly, leaning against the doorframe. I was wondering when this day would come. "What is this?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. "What have you been doing to me?" She walked into the room slowly, like she was approaching a frightened animal. "I've been trying to save both of us," she said, "and I think I finally figured out how." The cameras were still recording. The red lights blinked steadily, and I realized they'd been watching me discover the truth about my own life. Even this moment was being documented, studied, analyzed. I was the subject of my wife's secret experiment, and I didn't even know what I'd done to deserve it. Sarah sat down on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in months, she looked directly into my eyes without any barriers between us. "Do you remember our wedding night?" she asked softly. "You locked me out," I said, my voice hollow. "You've locked me out every night since." "Do you remember what happened before I locked the door?" I shook my head, confused. "We came home, we were happy, we were going to, and then you locked me out." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "We went to bed together that night. We fell asleep in each other's arms, just like we'd dreamed about. And then, around 3 a.m., you attacked me." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "You were asleep," she said quickly. "You were having some kind of nightmare, but your eyes were wide open. You started shouting about enemies, about people trying to hurt me. And then you grabbed me and threw me against the headboard so hard I saw stars." I stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. "That's not... I would never..." "You left bruises on my arms," she continued, rolling up her sleeves to show me faded marks I'd never noticed. "You were shouting and thrashing and trying to fight off some invisible attacker. When I tried to wake you up, you didn't recognize me. You looked right through me like I wasn't there. Can you imagine finding out you were dangerous to the person you love most, and they protected you without you even knowing?" The love Sarah showed was incredible. Sarah moved to the desk and pulled out a tablet. "I started recording after the 3rd episode. I thought maybe if I could show you what was happening, we could figure out how to fix it together." She pressed play on a video, and I watched in horror as a version of myself I'd never seen before appeared on the screen. I was on the couch, apparently asleep, But my body was rigid and my arms were swinging at invisible attackers. I was shouting words I couldn't make out, my face twisted with rage and fear. "Oh God," I whispered. "It's called REM sleep behavior disorder," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her tears. "During your REM sleep, your brain doesn't paralyze your muscles like it's supposed to, so you act out your dreams physically, and apparently you've been having very violent dreams." She showed me more videos. In one, I was sitting up on the couch, eyes wide open but clearly asleep, having an entire conversation with someone who wasn't there. In another, I was throwing punches so hard that if anyone had been nearby, I could have seriously hurt them. "This is why you locked me out," I said, the pieces finally falling into place. I researched everything I could find about the condition. I contacted sleep specialists, neurologists, anyone who might be able to help. Dr. Martinez has been working with me to document your episodes so we can develop a treatment plan. I thought about all the nights I'd lain on that couch, angry and hurt, thinking Sarah was rejecting me. The whole time, she was protecting both of us from something I couldn't control. The medical pamphlets, the supplements, and all for you. I've been trying everything to help you sleep more peacefully. The melatonin, the magnesium, I put them in your evening tea, hoping they might reduce the episodes. And the phone calls, the secrets, doctors, researchers, sleep clinics. I was trying to find someone who could help us without, she gestured to the cameras, the notebooks, the months of data, without having to put you through the embarrassment of knowing how bad it was. I looked around the room, our bedroom that had become a laboratory, all in service of protecting me from myself. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I thought there was someone else." She came to me then, kneeling beside the chair where I sat, surrounded by evidence of her sacrifice. "I was terrified," she admitted. "That first night I didn't know if you'd hurt me again, but I also knew that you'd be devastated if you found out what you'd done while you were sleeping. So, you've been dealing with this alone for 6 months. I haven't been alone," she said, taking my hands. "I've been with you. I've been watching over you every night, making sure you were safe, documenting everything so we could find a way to fix this together. The cameras, the notebooks, the samples. It all made horrible, beautiful sense. My wife hadn't been experimenting on me. She'd been studying me, protecting me, loving me in the most difficult way possible. And I'd spent 6 months thinking she was the one betraying our marriage. The days that followed were some of the most emotionally complex of my life. The guilt I felt was overwhelming. Not only had Sarah been innocent of everything I'd suspected, but she'd been heroically protecting both of us, while I'd been doubting her love. "I need you to understand something," Sarah said as we sat together, in our kitchen the morning after the revelation. "I never wanted to keep this from you. Every night when I locked that door, it broke my heart a little more." She showed me her research, months of careful documentation that painted a clear picture of my condition. REM sleep behavior disorder affects less than 1% of the population, and it can be incredibly dangerous if left untreated. People have seriously injured their partners, even killed them, during violent episodes. "The sleep study is scheduled for next Tuesday," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "Dr. Martinez thinks we can manage your condition with a combination of medication and sleep environment modifications. Have you ever had to protect someone in a way they couldn't understand? Sometimes love looks different than we expect." I learned that Sarah had been getting maybe 3 hours of sleep a night, staying awake to monitor my episodes and make sure I didn't hurt myself. The weight loss, the dark circles under her eyes, the exhaustion I'd attributed to stress. It was all because she'd been my guardian angel while I slept, and I'd never known. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand. "The answer. Because you would have been devastated," she said simply. "You would have insisted on sleeping somewhere else permanently, or you would have refused treatment because you'd be too embarrassed. I know you, honey. You would have tried to protect me by pushing me away." She was right. If I'd known I was dangerous to her, I would have left. I would have destroyed our marriage to keep her safe, even if there were ways to manage the condition. "So you became my doctor, my protector, my researcher, I became your wife, she corrected. This is what wives do. We protect the people we love, even when it's hard, even when they don't understand. The sleep study confirmed everything Sarah had documented. I was diagnosed with severe REM sleep behavior disorder, likely triggered by stress and major life changes, like getting married. The specialist was amazed by the quality of Sarah's documentation. Your wife's research has saved us months of trial and error, Dr. Martinez told me. She's identified your triggers, your patterns, even which medications might work best based on her observations. We began treatment immediately. A combination of clonazepam to suppress my REM sleep and environmental modifications to our bedroom, padded surfaces, removal of anything I could use as a weapon during episodes, and yes, initially, separate sleeping arrangements until the medication took effect. But this time, the separation felt different. We were working together toward a solution instead of me feeling abandoned and confused. The most profound moment came when Sarah showed me the folder labeled Our Future. Inside were printouts about couples who'd successfully managed REM sleep, behavior disorder, research about long-term treatments, even floor plans for how we could modify our bedroom to be safer. You never gave up on us, I said, overwhelmed by the depth of her commitment. Never, she replied. Not for a single day. Slowly, as the medication began to work and my episodes decreased, we started the process of reclaiming our bedroom. The cameras came down. The medical equipment was moved to the closet. Sarah's notebooks were filed away as a reference for my ongoing treatment. And for the first time in 6 months, we fell asleep together in our own bed, the door unlocked, morning sunlight streaming through windows that had been closed off from me for too long. Love, I learned, sometimes looks like rejection when you don't have the full picture. The strongest relationships aren't built on never having problems. They're built on protecting each other through the problems, even when that protection is misunderstood. 6 months later, I'm writing this story from our bedroom, the same room, that once felt like a prison, but now represents the strongest foundation our marriage has ever had. My REM sleep behavior disorder is well managed with medication and lifestyle changes. I still have occasional mild episodes, but Sarah and I both know how to handle them now. Our bedroom has some modifications, softer furniture, a bed rail on my side, and a special mattress that minimizes movement. But they don't feel like barriers anymore. They feel like love made practical. Sarah's sister Emma finally admitted she'd known everything from the beginning. I helped her research treatment options, she confessed during a family dinner. Those phone calls you heard? Half of them were her calling me in tears because she was so exhausted and scared, but she refused to give up on finding a solution. The whispered conversations that had made me so paranoid were actually Sarah reaching out for support while trying to protect my dignity. Her family had been part of an incredible support network I'd never known existed. My friends, when we finally told them the truth, were amazed by Sarah's dedication. Mark shook his head in wonder. Dude, she's a keeper. Most people would have just left after the first episode, but Sarah had never even considered leaving. In sickness and in health, she reminded me. I meant every word of those vows. If this story taught you something about love and trust, please like and subscribe. And remember, sometimes the people who love us most are the ones protecting us in ways we never see. The moral lessons from our experience have changed how I view relationships entirely. Trust, I learned, doesn't always mean knowing everything about your partner's actions. Sometimes trust means accepting that your partner knows things you don't, and they're using that knowledge to protect both of you. Love doesn't always look like romance and passion. Sometimes love looks like scientific research conducted at 3M. Sometimes love looks like sleeping alone to keep someone safe. Sometimes love looks like carrying a burden in silence so the person you care about doesn't have to. Sarah taught me that the strongest marriages aren't built on never having problems. They're built on solving problems together, even when one person has to carry the heavier load for a while. Our bedtime routine now is nothing like what I'd imagined as a newlywed, but it's beautiful in its own way. We take my medication together. We do the breathing exercises the sleep specialist recommended. We've created a peaceful environment that promotes healthy sleep for both of us. And every night as we settle into bed together, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for a wife who saw me at my most vulnerable and dangerous and chose to love me anyway. The door to our bedroom stays open now, not because we have to, but because we want to. It represents the transparency and trust we've built through the most difficult period of our marriage. There are no more secrets, no more barriers, no more misunderstandings. Just two people who learn that true love sometimes requires making painful, misunderstood sacrifices to protect the people we cherish, and that the greatest betrayals can actually be the greatest acts of love. Our marriage is stronger now than it was on our wedding day because it's been tested by something that could have destroyed us, and we chose to fight for each other instead of against each other. The locked door that once represented everything wrong with our marriage now reminds us of everything that's right with it. Sarah's unwavering commitment, her brilliant problem-solving, her willingness to sacrifice her own comfort for our future, together. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones protecting us in ways we never see. Sarah protected me from the knowledge of my own condition until she could also provide me with solutions. She protected us both from the violence I couldn't control, and she protected our marriage from the shame and fear that could have torn us apart. If you're going through something in your relationship that doesn't make sense, if your partner is asking you to trust them without explanation, remember this story. Sometimes the most loving thing someone can do is carry a burden alone until they can share both the problem and the solution. Love isn't always pretty. It's not always romantic. But when it's real, it's willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters most, and that's a love worth fighting for.